you are a seasoned aspirant, do we really get into the fundamental themes and read the static part as it should be? It is not very easy कि एक aspirant जाके Cambridge Press का book उठा के वहां से एक fundamental theme ले रहा है, एक IGNOU से ले रहा है, एक committee report से ले रहा है. Current affairs, we go and study simultaneous elections, but the question which appeared, it was more on the lines of a static cross current affairs question. So this next webinar is going to be a very tough webinar and an interesting webinar. All the beginners and seasoned aspirants, I would request you to join this and take these skills. Hi. In the year 2013, a book was released by the Cambridge Press by the name of Consequential Quotes. Now, in that particular book, there was a chapter 10 which talked about public interest litigation and the transformation of Supreme Court in India. Now this year was marked the 75th year of Supreme Court, and in accordance with that, UPSC asked a particular question in this year mains, which looked something like this. Explain the reasons for the growth of public interest litigation in India. As a result of it, has the Indian Supreme Court emerged as the world's most powerful democracy? And it asked you to answer in 250 words. If we go back to that particular book, this is the exact same thing which was discussed in this particular chapter. Now, for an aspirant who studies whole lot of books and many more current affairs, is it easy for him to link these two aspects? Good evening, everybody. This is Nishith Sir, and in the next webinar, we are going to delineate and deconstruct the question paper of the year 2024 from the polity angle and see exactly what were the fundamental themes that appeared from current affairs. And as a beginner, what should be your approach? Even if you are a seasoned aspirant, do we really get into the fundamental themes and read the static part as it should be? Now let us take one more example. This was the first question of this year, which talked about examine the need of electoral reforms as suggested by various committees with particular reference to one nation, one election principle. This was the first question of this year's paper. Now, one nation, one election principle and simultaneous elections, these have been in news constantly over the period of last 5-6 years. Especially last year, a report came out by a high-level committee headed by the ex-president Ramnath Kovind. Now, the summary of that report looked something like this. It talked about the rationale of one nation, one election principle in elections. Then it talked about the implementation, constitutional provisions, and logistical issues. And you all would agree with me, last year from the current affairs perspective, we essentially handled this topic from these all aspects. Now let us see the question again. It talks about the need of electoral reforms suggested by various committees in the context of one nation, one election principle. So essentially, the preparation pedagogy which we follow while approaching current affairs seems somewhat like this. In the static part, we read the electoral reforms and the various committee names. You read Lakshmikant. Now in Lakshmikant, these have individual chapters, especially electoral reforms. Now in current affairs, we go and study simultaneous elections. But the question which appeared, it was more on the lines of a static cross current affairs question, where you had to analyze a particular current affairs topic from the perspective of static. Now, how do we do this? How do we approach this? Since if you see, this was the high-level committee report summary which was released by PRS, and most of the current affairs materials which came out that year was a slight tweak or a slight change in this particular aspect only. But we in our team, when we research for the Samachar Manthan part especially, we go a bit deeper, and if we see the particular report on simultaneous election, you will see a section on annexures which exactly contains the reports and the names of committees and other bodies. which have suggested simultaneous elections as an electoral reform. Now, how do we reach this aspect? Do we have to read all the committee reports then and even their annexures? That is not the right way to study and go forward. This is exactly what we are going to discuss on the webinar day. Now, let us take one more question. It asked you about the role of local bodies in providing good governance at local level. This was a pretty straightforward question. Come to the second part. It asks you to present an analysis with all the pros and cons of a merger, of a possible merger between the rural local bodies with the urban local bodies. Now again, this is a theme which you will not find in your general static books. Then we think कि ये current affairs से आया होगा. But if you see the current affairs news that year, there were fragmented and staggered news items which talked about state plans to merge villages with urban local bodies by December. It was a specifically state-specific news with respect to Tamil Nadu. Now, before that, however, if you see, the way we approach a particular current affairs topic determines whether you are going to write the specific answer with proper value additions or not. I'll give you an example as in how I approach this topic and how our research goes forward. While studying local bodies, we have to go beyond Lakshmikant and Dedi Basu. Like this particular topic was especially a part of the IGNOU material where it talked about the trend towards consolidation in the intra-local government relationship chapter. Now in the simultaneous election wala topic, we saw the static part of it was taken by us from the government committee report. In this particular topic, we took the same static portion from a different source. Now, this is how UPSC's questions are evolving and our current affairs preparation should evolve accordingly. Gone are those days where we were talking about challenges, government initiatives and way forward. UPSC's pattern of asking questions in UPSC Mains from current affairs has changed. And our preparation should also change accordingly. So in this particular webinar, we will be taking a few more questions and I'll be providing you an insight and immersion into a Samachar Manthan class. In that, we will be taking up a very hot news in the current affairs these days, that is the increase in the GST of tobacco and sugar related products. Along with that, there are 3 top skills which we will be trying to explore in this webinar. First is spotting the news items. Second would be lack of identifying fundamental themes of every current affairs and how, as aspirants, we should be approaching them. Just as we saw, it is not very easy कि एक aspirant जाके Cambridge Press का book उठा के वहाँ से एक fundamental theme ले रहा है, एक IGNOU से ले रहा है, एक committee report से ले रहा है. Your preparation will go haywire. The bottom line of UPSC current affairs preparation should be read little but present or explore the answer paper in many more words. अगर आप 100 words पढ़ रहे हैं, you should have the skill to write 250 words out of that 100 words. For that, it is very important to identify the fundamental themes of a particular current affair news. And finally, we are going to explore how the static current affairs mismatch is playing out in present UPSC pattern. So this next webinar is going to be a very tough webinar and an interesting webinar. All the beginners and seasoned aspirants, I would request you to join this and take these skills which will help you in your preparation. Thank you.